Hello and good afternoon and welcome to Breaking the Silence, a podcast where we talk about mental health, addiction, and recovery. My name is Allen Kharlip. I am the Clinical Supervisor of Addiction Rehab Toronto. And today I have a very, very special guest in person, Miss Jeanne Foote.
Perfect. The
Recovery Concierge. And I really, really like that name.
Thank you.
I really like that name. And I was, looking on your website earlier and I saw, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And I love that. That's one of my favorite sayings. But once again, no introduction. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me. Proud to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, one of the things that I get excited about the most is being able to speak with somebody that's in the field of addiction, mental health through and through, like lived experience, like you have had, right? And, just looking at your website and seeing, some of the quotes that really stand out to me, I really thought that this is going to be a great conversation and fit. And, you're doing a lot of great things with your organization. I just wanted to kind of ask you first and foremost, what sort of got you into this field of addiction and mental health and therapy and trauma and how you've been able to sort of persevere through the work that you do with your clients.
Thank you for having me, firstly. I always say that the field chose me, not I chose the field. It was the other way around, right?
Yeah.
I resisted it for a long time. I've been involved in a family business and I wasn't looking for a vocation. But I think that with lived experience, you always want to give back and serve. And so that was no different for me. And I finally decided to take a course after a long time of resisting. And once I did, I was hooked. But I think really what got me into the field was when I first went to treatment in 93, I was in my early 30s, had a young family. My life looked picture perfect on the outside, really picture perfect on the outside, but internally, the self-loathing was terrible. I couldn't even look in a mirror. I was suicidal, but nobody knew but me. I was not medicated. And this was after 7 years of sobriety. So I went to treatment in 93. This is in 2000. After 7 years of sobriety, I thought, if this is all recovery is, there's got to be more. There's got to be more because I don't want to put any part of it. But no one was suggesting what the alternative was. So I was doing all the things I was supposed to do, going to meetings, going to aftercare, going to therapy, but really I wasn't well. I didn't have any skills. I didn't have any tools. And I just really I was probably not medicated and like my mood was low. And so that sent me on a quest to find something different. And I started doing my own research, and that's basically how I ended up here. It was something that really, I was looking for a better outcome, a more sustainable outcome of what recovery could be for me.
I think, the biggest thing that, and especially the listeners that do listen to our podcast, they constitute abstinence and sobriety with happiness, right? And you just painted a big example there, right? Where you're 7 years sober, abstinent, no drugs, no alcohol, yet you're dying on the inside.
So unwell. Like I was frozen in my own skin. And I believe, and so I have to be careful saying a statement like this because I'm not saying that everybody who's abstinent should go out and try it, okay? And that's not the message here. The message is that sometimes it's our level of functioning compared to abstinence. Because if we can be abstinent and we may not have any emotional regulation, we may have conflict in our life still because we haven't done any reparative work in our relationships or whatever that may be for some people, and yet we can be abstinent. So I don't know if that's always a litmus test for recovery. Sure. I think, and then more so now with a new and emerging frontier with psychedelics, medication management, neuroscience. I think there's so much more. So I think we have to find recovery in our way. And that's not a disclaimer to say that anybody should go out and just go back to their old way, because their old ways can be a treacherous, slippery slope for some people. It could be a difference between life and death. But at the same time, there's nuance in between. And I think we need to embrace that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you talk about the mentality that you had, being abstinent, being sober, and then almost like, not being able to find some sort of sense of purpose in your life. How was that journey for you? And, you mentioned like, feeling hopeless and not really knowing or not really sure what was going on, what the outcome was going to be. And then you kind of, found your purpose, you found your sense of okay, this is what I need to be doing. What sort of brought you to that element of like, I really need to do something different here because the way that I'm living right now is just not working?
It was very painful for me. It was a combination of things. I think the first thing I thought of was I actually went to a kundalini yoga class. That was the first thing that I found. That was experiential, that was different, and that uses somatics and breath work, etc. And I dragged my daughter, who was 18 at the time, said, come on, we're going to go to a class. And we ended up, it was one of the first times Tommy Rosen from Recovery 2.0 had done a yoga class in Toronto. And Maston Kip was his event, so it was a double header. And at this time, I was just really intrigued by personal development and anything different.
Sure.
I went in there, and we came out 4.5 hours later. Like, I think we went in around 6, and we came out close to midnight, which is not 4.5 hours later. And one of the things I noticed was, like, I felt euphorically high naturally, which is one of the reasons why I named my podcast Naturally High, for that reason. I had never felt that way drug-free. Never. So that was like, oh my God, like there's a feeling that can be achieved in a different way. And I think that was really what cemented it for me. Like, oh my God, there's so many other ways we can do this. And I didn't know what they were.
Yeah, wow. And it's just like, being like having that opportunity to be sort of exposed to something different, sort of created that journey and path for you. Okay, so you do this 4.5 hour, marathon. and it's shaped a different perspective and a different experience for you, to the point where you were naturally feeling so much endorphins pumping through your body and feeling that ability to be like, you know what, maybe here I am, I can breathe again. And then after that, what happened?
Okay, so I should back up one quick second. So part of my history is I have tremendous lived experience with complex trauma. And I lived with it for many years. It wasn't just one occurrence, it was many, many years. So it really shaped how I coped, who I was in terms of personality. And my solution was drugs, substance, right? That's the only coping tool I had up until I put it down. But once I put it down, there was a huge void, because that wasn't the total solution. And in '93, when I originally went to treatment, I disclosed fully my history, but nobody took any notice. The focus was on substance, always substance. Nowadays, trauma is trendy, but back in those days, nobody knew what trauma was.
Of course not.
No, it was just like, it was unheard of. So that was part of my frustration. My frustration was I didn't know that they were supposed to support me in that, but I didn't know it was my job either to find that solution either. So because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, of course.
And so, I would have a history of relapse. So for example, I wasn't doing heroin. I just self-medicated with, I'm not minimizing weed and alcohol, but for the most part, it was like, I would have 2.5 years, 4 years, 7 years, and then I would go back up thinking that was my solution. So there was a frustration around that I'm not doing it right. And I already had tremendous shame and stigma from my own lived experience that I didn't need that from the community, right? Sure. So that really compounded, I think, my trauma, in the sense that there was no relief for me anywhere. I didn't belong with normies, and I didn't belong in the recovery world, because I was seeing things very different, even though I bought into what was prescribed, because there wasn't a better solution in the 90s. So that was sort of the impetus for me finding. Another defining incident was one of my children, who obviously mental illnesses ripped through 3 generations of our family, who was a teenager at the time, 15, and back in 2005. And he literally, we bought his life. He was highly suicidal, talked about killing himself every single day for months and months and months. I think not even months, years. And we did the traditional routes like Sunnybrook, all the things. And he was discharged to see a social worker later that week. And it suddenly hit me that nobody knows what this looks like, not even the professionals. Like, they don't know how to navigate and find the right therapeutic fit for us. So it's my job. And so then it became my obsession to figure out how to do this for him, which led us to the US, and we navigated him back then to Utah. And it was a whole complete learning curve on how to do therapeutic placement, which has become part of my business model. But then there was another component of it, which was the tools. Like, how do we create sustainable recovery? Because there's still a lot of emphasis on more of the traditional older models. I'm of a theory good, better, best. So I'm not we're not debating models. We're just saying that basically, is there more? Can we do better?
Sure.
For better outcomes, more sustainable outcomes? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
When we start to bring in different tools such as neuroscience, such as somatic, such as nervous system regulation, such as epigenetics, like there's a lot of different ways we can do this. And so that was part of my own evolution. I was doing it for myself because I was so desperate. And I always say my willingness was proportionate to my desperation for peace. Yeah. I was in such emotional turmoil most of my life that I think had it been easier, I definitely would have given up. I wouldn't have tried. I just would have said, you know what, I'll coast with easy. Yeah. Good enough is good enough. Yeah. And it didn't feel that way for me. Yeah. It felt really painful.
Yeah, I'll dazzle people with my mediocrity, right? Because it's just, that's what it is. And sometimes, you get into that place where you're okay with that, but, just kind of from what you're describing, it's like, the pain became so intense where it's like, the pain of staying the same becomes greater than maybe the potential of fear of change.
But that's transition, right?
And that's the transition piece. I want to go back really quickly. So just to what you were talking about with your son there, and you went to see these medical professionals, and, you mentioned that, as a doctor or as a medical professional, they couldn't really decipher what was wrong with him to the degree of, all of these different sort of modalities. Why do you think that that's the case for medical professionals or doctors?
God. So there's a lot of things that came out of this, which will make sense to the viewer. Number one, the system's broken. There's no system. The system's a non-system. It's fragmented. So once we understand that, it doesn't talk to one another. It hides behind privacy. It's strained. It's outdated models. Newer emergent practices just take time for it to become more mainstream. And interestingly enough, I fell into a volunteer project called the Family Navigation Project, and I'm one of the founding parents and I'm past chair. I chaired that program with Dr. Anthony Levitt for over 7 years. And it was the most incredible learning experience. And how that happened was he found a bunch of parents who all had the same experience navigating their children to Utah and wanted to know, held a town hall meeting, wanted to know what was our experience. Had no idea what I was getting into. I thought I was volunteering like a few hours a week. Turned into be a full-time vocation, 30 hours a week.
Wow.
So we built that program from the ground up. And the part of the program it was parents with lived experience, but clinically informed. So we would share our lived experience of what was wrong systemically, how we had our experience, and they were, the plots were, slightly different, the characters were slightly different, but it was really the same story over and over again. There was some door that was the wrong door for families to go through. And so that was no different with our son. And so that's how we came to be. And that's the Family Navigation Project's probably going into it, started in 2010, so 15th year, and operates as the RBC Run for the Kids every September, and it operates on a huge budget. And I was instrumental in developing that with other parents.
Wow. Yeah. It's almost like, you take your sort of collaborative efforts of what went wrong and being like, okay, well, how is it that we can sort of transition to make this right again, right? And just getting you guys all together and being able to be a part of such a bigger movement allowed this project and this program to really blossom.
I think there's lived experience is very valuable, whether it's in cancer or neonatal or whatever. There is value in it. I also think that for me, it was a way for me to absorb myself in something. Like I had a ferocious appetite, still do, but tempered it a bit in terms of learning and growing in that, because that's just who I was. Sure. Because because of my addiction, I didn't complete high school and university, and I lost out on opportunities. So I'm finally being discerning at this stage of my life that you can't do it all. You think you can do it all, but you have to make choices, right? Yeah.
It's almost like that black and white thinking. I'm either going to do all of it or I'm not going to do any of it, right? So even the challenge for, myself being in recovery is like, how do I really meet that middle ground and be okay with, as long as I know that I'm putting my best foot forward, that's all I can ask for myself. Right?
I don't know if we do balance so well. I think it's a learned experience. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so tell me a little bit about, the Recovery Concierge, how did that sort of come into play, and how has it sort of grown and involved, and where did it come from? Was it an idea? Was it sort of a pilot project, and then how it sort of transformed into what it is today?
It was.
Love the name, by the way.
Pardon? Thank you.
I love the name, by the way.
Well, actually, someone stole my first name, and I went, darn, they're not incorporated. How did they steal my name, right? But I registered first, and then suddenly the name just dropped out of the air. So I'm grateful for that. How did it come to be? It was really innovated out of what wasn't there, okay, and what was needed. So basically, the Recovery Concierge is a boutique, basically recovery management agency that has a suite of services. So it does continuing care, it does aftercare plans, it does, performance coaching, it does recovery coaching, it does alcohol management. So people do a lot of alcohol monitoring. Monitoring means nothing unless someone's managing it. Because what happens when there's a crisis? Are we going to learn from it? Are we going to try and, like a crisis comes up if someone fails a sober link test, for example, or whatever. It's handled so poorly, like even with legal. They think that, you don't want your parents or your spouse being a watchdog. You need a third party who has some experience. So it came out of whatever wasn't there, we did therapeutic placement. A lot of people run therapeutic placement on Google Ads and probably now ChatGPT, God knows what that says. But, it's not based on appropriate clinical fit. And there's always more than one way to do anything. And so you want to find the most appropriate fit for that client at that stage, because you can always intensify up. But if you go too hard, too fast, which a lot of poorly informed people do, you can ruin relationships and it becomes counterproductive, right? So it was really came out of what wasn't there and what was needed.
Okay. And how has that sort of propelled you to how you're able to operate today? And just because, just doing a little bit of research on your services, there's a lot of, obviously addiction is one facet of things. And then, you sort of get into the component of trauma and therapy and using different modalities, right? Because, when somebody comes in for an addiction issue, it's like, how can you treat anything else? If there's trauma, if there's concurrent disorder, it's like, you got to treat the addiction piece first, because how do you know what's right, what? And you got to separate that layer. But, when people come in, it's like they're so desperate because they want to fix everything all at once, and, how do you get them into that place of, you got to slow the process down and just tackle one thing at a time? Well,
our model is holistic. So we look at whole health, every area of the person's life. You're right. So we got to stabilize the house from burning down, right? Yes. So we have to do the structural work first. Sure. And there is an element to sequence in treatment. So, for example, we're not going to start doing trauma work when someone's got an active addiction. It just doesn't make sense, right? So a lot of our work is in knowing not only what to do, but how to do it and the timing of it as well. So I think that is an important part of it. It's not just holistic. It's just, there was something that you said, and I forgot the point I was trying to make around it. It's just that there's a lot of different ways you can do recovery or mental health or trauma or addiction. And you can throw a ton of money at it and you may or may not get it right, or you can throw no money and you may or may not get it right. So it's not to say that you shouldn't try. It means that you have to be more discerning and step back as to what is the most appropriate fit at this moment in time. And so I think when I look at it, I think the piece that's really missing out of what I believe systemically is two things. One is we're not encompassing our humanity, how complex it is to be human. We discount that. So there's a lot of universal feelings around being human. Am I good enough? Do I suffer from shame? And there's spectrum on that. Some people suffer from shame majorly. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. Some people minorly, or at times are situational. So I think understanding our complexity as human beings is essential, and that's discounted in a lot of different behavioral health models. And then I think the other part is we're not using the power of our subconscious mind, which drives all our behavior. Our subconscious is linked to our emotional behavior, our subconscious mind is linked to our emotional behavior. It controls all our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. So if we're not looking at that, you may dial it down with willpower. I'm going to go to a meeting. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And on a good day, all these things work really well. But when someone's fatigued or there's external stressors and everything's coming in for that person, or they're not understanding their nature by their physiology, their psychology, and how they're intertwined, in which they're so intertwined, and we keep treating head and body separately, then that person's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so when we understand that and look at the root drivers of behavior, which is from basically 95% of all our behavior is coming from our subconscious mind. And if we're not dealing with that, at best, we're just going to get a temporary reprieve. Mm-hmm. You'll dial it down for a while under the ideal conditions, but as soon as something isn't ideal, it will come back with a vengeance. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand why a lot of models are not utilizing that as more mainstream for that reason. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that, right? And I mean, people have this idea that, even detox or treating the body is one thing, right? And as long as I'm feeling physically I'm okay, then I'll be okay. And then, you walk out and, your mind is going, right? And that self-deception and all of the loudness of the voice continues to get louder and louder and louder. And then it's like, well, that's my coping mechanism that I know what's best, right? And through my ability to understand that I can't allow experiences to become my narrative, right? And and how do I detach, or how do we detach ourselves from that experience so it doesn't become our narrative? There's a lot.
Yeah, the narrative runs a show, and whether it's truth or not, so we have to be discerning what we're going to tell ourselves, right?
Yeah.
If we're walking around telling ourselves I fucked up, I screwed up, sorry, I'm not probably going to have to blurt that I'm a big match, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. So why don't we just program ourselves differently and better?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So now, it seems like you've got a bundle of different services and different things that you offer, a client. So if somebody's, listening to this podcast today, what can you maybe sum up for us about what the Recovery Concierge is about, and, what they can expect if they were to, give you a call or give one of your colleagues a call?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. Number one, we meet people where they're at rather than trying to fit them into a system that may not be appropriate fit. I love mentoring people who really want to go to that next level. That really, truly lights me up, because there's an infinite of possibilities for people where they feel like their recovery may be lukewarm, tepid.
Yeah.
And it can be beautiful. It can be amazing. Mm-hmm. You can really do a lifestyle redesign, which is what we do for people. We give them exactly the life that they dream of, and we show them how with the tools, right? Mm-hmm. For professionals, we're starting a training academy. So I don't believe that I can serve as many people as I'd like to, and I'm somewhat fatigued from it. So I feel like my mission now, my legacy, is something that wants to live beyond me, which is to train other professionals how I do what I do so that they can play it forward. And I think that's where we're landing right now.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you sort of highlight when you're doing these training sessions with these professionals?
I think there's two components. Is how do we meet someone on the beginning of their journey? Because I think a lot of people end up at the wron door, repeating their story over and over again. Yeah, so
looking for a fix.
So aligning for a right professional who can be the advocate to fellow journey with them, I think is a big component. So, you could say, oh, I can do a reasonably good job if you're a psychotherapist, and you probably can. But there's a lot more you could learn by learning how to do a full case management and the way that we do it, which is client and family-centered care if there's a family involved. It's a holistic model. It's trauma-informed. There's a lot of different ways that we do things. So there's that component for the professional, as well as the tools that make someone truly, their recovery truly sustainable.
Right. Interesting. Tell me a little bit about your podcast. So, that's something that has evolved as a part of your, foundation for, hearing the message, carrying the message, allowing people to sort of listen in and tune into, how you operate, how you help people, how, you talk about a variety of topics. Tell me a little bit about Naturally High.
I just thought it was sliding.
Yeah. The energy can hear us.
Yeah, naturally high was innovated out of what I would want for everybody in recovery. Like, it's really that simple. Like, if you're going to get high with substance or addictive behaviors that are really not healthy for you, is there another way? Because that's what we're competing with, right? So I found that in that kundalini class that day. And so that's how the name came about. I've done a few, I think 2 or 3 actually, trauma summits, where I've interviewed a panel of experts, and there's some amazing, amazing names on there. I don't even have to give the list, but if you went into Naturally High, you would see the names, and I think anybody would be intrigued. Some of them are my own self-reflections. Some of them are interviews with other professionals, just talking about stuff like maybe we're talking about today, but a little bit more trauma-specific and how that impacts with addiction. And that's really how it came to be. So, like, I did 100 episodes. I took a hiatus, and now I'm coming back, which is one of the reasons why I'm sitting here talking with you, and also relaunching very shortly in the fall.
Amazing. That's great. To our viewers that are listening here today, if you can sort of maybe leave them with like a closing message or something that, you know, in your long years of experience are able to sort of say in a few words, what would that be? And why?
I know. So it's something I have seen with everybody I've counseled over the years. And as people sit across from me, I always say, if you could only see what I see, you'd never play so small.
Love that. Thank you very much for being on the show today. I'm here with Jeanne Foote, the Recovery Concierge, creator of Naturally High podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great episode, and look forward to doing more with you.
Likewise. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
That was great.